shade of blue, and her skin was dusky and golden. It was too bad so much of it was covered by her black fatigues. She looked ready to do battle, and Hawkins had to admit it didn't get much hotter than a gorgeous woman with a thigh holster and a utility belt. "You know the jewel should never leave Castellania," one of the men said. He swore under his breath. There would be bodies to dispose of. Byron wouldn't be much of a ghost if he couldn't get in and out without a trail of blood a mile wide in his wake, and he could tell this guy wasn't going to let the jewel go without a fight. He hoped he wouldn't have to dispose of the woman, but he would if she stood between him and his mission. He wasn't just a trained killer. He was a born killer. "The jewel isn't going back," the woman answered defiantly. "I can't kill you yet," the man said, sadistic glee lighting his cruel face. "But I can hurt you." Byron knew he had to act. The woman had the jewel, or she knew where it was. He launched himself from his hiding place and snapped the big man's neck with a single fluid motion. He dropped like a stone, and the other would-be jewel thief sprang to action. He hurled himself toward the woman. Hawkins would have saved her, but she saved herself. As he watched her seamless movements taking the other man down, he realized he'd been right in his assessment. Krav Maga. Hawkins was impressed. Even though she'd subdued the other man instead of killing him, he wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating her. She didn't seem afraid of him. In fact, she looked almost happy to see him. That didn't bode well, not at all. It was almost as if she were expecting him. But if that were the case, that would mean his cover had been blown. If she thought he was someone else, maybe he could use that to get her to hand over the stone. "Thanks for the assist," she said. Her voice was melodic and sweet, with an accent he couldn't place. She wasn't Tunisian. It was almost Greek. The dossier said the culture and the people of Castellania were a blend of the two. He wondered if she was a rebel or a patriot. He could tell from the fire in her eyes that she burned with one cause or another. It would be easier if she was just a jewel thief, an unscrupulous antiquities dealer. Those could be bought off. Not so much when it was a cause. "Don't thank me yet, sweetheart. I'm here for the jewel." He flashed a slow, lazy grin that belied the urgency of the operation. She smiled, baring all of her straight white teeth at him. "You're looking at it." "You're shitting me." There was no way that this woman was the jewel of Castellania. His eyes narrowed, and he assessed her with a particular intensity. "No, Mr. Hawkins, I would never do that. I'm Princess Demara Petrakis, also known as the Jewel of Castellania. We better get moving. The last thing we need is to get caught with a dead body on our hands." She knew his name. She had been expecting him. Damn it. This screwed all of his plans. That's gonna be a problem. I only made provisions for one. "They didn't tell you the jewel wasn't a stone?" She arched a dark brow. "No." And Hawkins knew why. As a private contractor, he could decline an assignment. His handler, Daniel Renner, knew that Byron would decline this one if he had all the information. He couldn't be responsible for another person's life. Renner didn't seem to understand that anyone under his care was more likely to die than be rescued. Damn him straight to hell, he thought. Renner knew what he'd been through in Uganda, knew why he'd left the army. He knew it, and he hadn't cared. The DOD wanted this woman on American soil, whatever it took, whatever the cost to Byron. He swallowed hard. Hawkins was a soldier to the marrow. He knew how this worked. The sacrifice of the few for the many. But this wasn't what he'd signed up for. He was willing to give his own life. And some nights, when the screaming in his head wouldn't stop, he prayed it would be his turn to give it. He owed his team that. But he couldn't be responsible for someone else's safety. Not again. Not after Uganda. If Renner